Out of the way, I am thrilled to welcome you to today's webinar, Bridging Lived Experience and Research, Introduction to Participating in Clinical Trials. Our guests today join us from Michael Smith Health Research BC, which is British Columbia's health research agency. Michael Smith Health Research BC is working towards a future where BC is recognized worldwide for its vibrant, coherent, inclusive, and globally competitive health research system that improves the health of British Columbians, the health system, and the economy. To achieve this, they support BC's top health researchers through funding programs that build the province's research capacity and address health system priorities. Michael Smith Health Research BC also enables research through programs and resources in the areas of patient-oriented research, clinical trials, research ethics, and knowledge translation. The Alzheimer's Society of BC is a proud partner of Michael Smith Health Research BC through collaborations on funding, training, and other initiatives like ReachBC. Now, ReachBC is an online platform that bridges the gap between the public and researchers, making it easier for patients and the public to find out what health research is happening in our province and to connect researchers with participants. Clinical Trials BC is also part of Michael Smith Health Research BC and supports clinical trial investigators, research sites, and institutions to ensure British Columbia is a world-class destination for clinical trials. Joining us today is Alison Orth, Portfolio Director, Research Programs, Ashlyn Quigley, Reach BC Program Manager, and Anya Wilcox, who is Reach BC's Platform Administrator. So a warm welcome to the three of you, and please take it away when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And thank you to the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia for inviting us here today. We're very excited to talk to you about clinical trials, to the community, and about Reach BC. I would like to begin by offering a territorial acknowledgement for Health Research BC. As a provincial organization, our work does extend across many Indigenous lands and territories throughout British Columbia. And we acknowledge with respect and humility that our Vancouver office is located on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Myself, I am located on the Semiahmoo First Nations, which is part of the unceded territories of the Coast Salish people. I'm very grateful to be able to live, work, and play here. Thank you for giving such a wonderful overview of Health Research BC and Clinical Trials BC. I did want to share a little bit about our focus on EDI and diversity in research, because I think that's really important when we think about clinical trials, we think about Reach BC. We do have a commitment as Health Research BC to address some of the systemic inequities embedded in the health research system. And this is not a static activity, but definitely a journey and continuous one of listening and learning. And that feeds back into the ways we work. So we do, when we think also about Reach, we try to think about ways to reach more people and more communities, and to hear from them about how we can help, how our work can better help them to engage in health research. I wanted to share also that as a funding agency, we are providing funding support to multidisciplinary groups of clinicians and scientists, including those that are working to improve how we diagnose dementia in Canada. So you might be familiar with the Impact AD study, which is led by Dr. Mari DeMarco, which is designed to specifically address barriers to the uptake and use of Alzheimer's disease biomarker testing in the Canadian healthcare system. And historically, the diagnosis has relied heavily on observing the signs and symptoms of the disease and by using basic imaging studies of the brain. But this new test measures biomarkers to identify the disease and identify it earlier than is possible without biomarkers. So this test is being used by doctors across Canada who specialize in dementia care. Patient samples are sent to the clinical lab at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver for analysis. And then these results are used by doctors to better direct care for their patients. So the clinical application of outcome from this study is really changing the approach to diagnosing Alzheimer's disease in Canada. And the study is investigating the impact of that testing now on medical care and getting direct perspective and input from individuals living with dementia. So what we'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about clinical trials specifically. Um, I've titled this Demystifying Clinical Trials. Many of you may have already been participating in trials in the past or thinking about participating in one, and hopefully can share a little bit about what that would be like and the things to be thinking about if considering participating in a clinical trial. I'd like to start with just a short 1-minute video to share with you, and then we can dig right in.
Did you know developing a new treatment or improving one usually starts with laboratory research, then moves to clinical trials with people just like you? There are many types of clinical trials: prevention, to look for ways to prevent illnesses; screening, to detect diseases or conditions; and treatment, to test new types of therapies. Participation is voluntary. People of all ages and backgrounds may assist researchers, discover new treatments, compare existing ones, or better manage illness. If you're healthy, by volunteering, you might learn about yourself. If you have a medical condition, you may help your health and your healthcare team better understand your illness. Your involvement may provide new medical information and may lead to treatment improvements, better disease management, or a new treatment. Clinical trials need people just like you. It starts with me. Ask your healthcare team about finding a clinical trial that's right for you.
So what are clinical trials? You often hear the terms health research, clinical trials, but clinical trials are specifically health research, a type of health research study that involves people, and are also a type of clinical research. But what makes them different is that they are carried out to test new treatments. So it's usually an intervention that you're comparing either to real world or to different new treatments. And we do these trials to discover how or to prevent or diagnose a disease. That's one reason we may do the trials. Another would be to learn to better understand how an illness is affecting a person's life, and also to provide us with information about a disease for clinical decision-making and policy-making. Clinical trials are really essential for evaluating the safety, but also how well the effectiveness, how well it works, and the outcomes of life-saving and health-promoting health interventions. And these might include vaccines, drugs, devices, but also health services. You can have a clinical trial around a health service and comparing two different ways of the service being provided or received. Developing a new treatment or improving one that already exists, if it is a vaccine drug, it generally starts in a laboratory with research, what we call preclinical research, and then it moves to studies with human volunteers, which is where we can find out answering questions about the impact on health and healthcare. We often are asked how many clinical trials are actually happening in BC or even in Canada. And currently there are 1,363 active trials in British Columbia, different types of trials, as I covered, which is 20% of all the trials that are happening in Canada. We had a look to see and found that 17 of these are studying or looking at different aspects of dementia or Alzheimer's. And of those 17, 9 are currently open to enrollment, 6 in Kelowna, 3 in Vancouver, 1 in Richmond. But I also wanted to show that we do have a dedicated clinical research unit, or that would be a dedicated team or facility for clinical research in all regions of British Columbia. For the north, though, that would be centered in Prince George. But we have Kelowna, Penticton, Kamloops, Victoria, Nanaimo, as well as across the Lower Mainland. And that's expanding all the time. So trying to make it easy to access. So what types of clinical trials are they? I alluded a little bit to that, but there really are 3 main types: either prevention trials, where we're looking for new ways to prevent illness; screening trials, where we're trying to better identify diseases or conditions; and then treatment trials, which is what you think of a clinical trial, experimental or testing, but it really is to try new types of treatments and the gold standard for determining how well they work in humans and in the real world settings. How do clinical trials themselves work? What does the process look like? Those involving new medications, and I'm going to focus primarily on that now, are done in a series, generally done in a series of steps. So though this is changing and becoming sort of more of a integrated cycle where you may go back from one phase to another, but generally the trials are done in a series of steps called phases. And this is so the researchers can better understand how the new medications are working in a gradual and safe way. So participants are closely monitored throughout each phase, but the first phases involve a very small number of people. And those results are reviewed and analyzed, including by an independent data monitoring committee and the medical monitors of the study. And before they'll move on to a second phase, often the regulatory agencies are doing a review, or research ethics boards will review later studies from later phases. Why would someone want to think about participating in a clinical trial? Really, clinical trials do help us find the safest options that can deliver the best treatments in the right way to the right people who do need them. And by participating, we can't do this without participants. It really is around our participants who may be healthy volunteers or patients that are looking at clinical trials as a care option. You might help the researchers find out what are the safest options in terms of the treatment, and better understanding how safe the treatment is. Comparing two or more, so you understand which one works better, and that could be something that's routinely prescribed and available right now, and versus a new one, to see, is it actually better, or is it better to stay with the one that's currently available? And by finding new ways and methods to use these existing treatments, we really can look to advance medicine in our understanding. Definitely part of that is making sure that you are able to do clinical trials within populations and groups of the people that the treatment is intended for. That might be in more in seniors care, in pediatric, with children, with adolescents, or even different ethnic populations where we need to understand what this would look like with the population we are hoping to most help. So there are many reasons, again, why you may choose to participate. And some of those benefits may really include yourself looking for treatment. We see this in oncology trials a lot for different types of cancer, where there may not currently be a treatment available that's going to help for that type of cancer, but there might be a clinical trial. So that can open the door either to improve quality of life or to help discover a treatment for future patients. In Canada, we have done a survey of 1,000 Canadians, including 100 parents of people who enrolled their child in a clinical trial, but also the other 900 who participated in a clinical trial or declined. And what we asked them was, what are the main reasons why you participate? And we found the number one in all groups is really to help others. Even if it's not going to benefit themselves, they participate because they're hoping that their contribution will benefit others, maybe going through the same the same situation or same challenges, same conditions, or those in the future. They also talk about wanting to advance medicine and more we know about a disease and treatment, and really helping Canadians to get healthier as a society overall. One of the challenges is really accessing and making sure those trials are available to diverse clinical trial to participants. That is one of the greatest challenges in clinical trials to developing the next generation of treatments. And that includes in individuals with dementia. Their caregivers and healthy volunteers are all needed to participate in clinical studies that are focusing on Alzheimer's and other dementias. Other than funding, that's one of the other ways that we can help. But there definitely are potential risks with the clinical trials. the healthcare professionals that are supervising and leading these trials in Canada for a clinical trial with a new treatment or medicine that is required to be a licensed physician. And then they have a team of other healthcare professionals that are wrap around to very much monitor, spend time with the participants, and put a lot of things in place to minimize those risks. But it is important to know what those risks are before agreeing to participate, and would always encourage you to speak to your own primary care provider or healthcare team about any clinical trial you are thinking about participating in, and to talk to them about those risks. Sometimes it might just be minor, something that has a very, very rare chance of potentially being serious or life-threatening, and that's something we'd encourage you to talk with your healthcare team, also your family, caregivers, other family members, trusted people in your circle. So who can participate in a clinical trial? It's completely up to you. Participants in clinical trials do receive a very high standard of care. They do have additional time and opportunity to talk with study staff, but you should also be continuing care with your regular care providers. Clinical trials are experimental, and as a result, do always involve some level of risk. But there are ethical and legal codes that do govern medical practice, and they also apply to clinical trials. And we have federal regulations in Canada through the Federal Food and Drug Act, which apply to the conduct of trials. In addition to that, each trial is reviewed and approved by a research ethics board, generally one that's local to the institution where the research is going to be conducted. And through that ethical review and through the regulatory review, but particularly the ethical, there's an analysis of the balance and distribution of the risks to the potential benefits. And that's really key to the ethics of research involving humans. So there is an ethical obligation on researchers to conduct research in a way that's going to protect the participants from any unnecessary or avoidable risks. And for a study to go forward, it really should have a favorable balance of the risks and benefits. And that's what they're looking for when they're giving the ethical approval. Where might you find clinical trials? Where do they happen? Oftentimes people envision them just being in a hospital or some more intensive care setting, but really they happen in many, many different places, whether it's your local doctor's office, definitely in hospitals or medical centers, sometimes in community or public health settings or stations. Sometimes you'll be going to the university or for depending on that. If it's not a treatment, but it might be they're testing a device, for example, maybe they're doing some sort of brain scan, that might be in a university setting. Sometimes even in your own home, more and more to make it easier, reduce barriers to participating. The clinical trial sector really is doing all that they can to try to reach people where they are, to not have to have them come in, to drive in, to take that time to come into a clinic where possible, if things can be done in their home or their local lab or in their local clinic. Who's involved in the clinical trial? So who is the team I was talking about? Of course, it's centered around the participant, and that's what we call clinical trial participant. There's always a principal investigator, or in Canada, they're called a qualified investigator, who is responsible, medically responsible for the participants and the conduct of the study. Also responsible to oversee all of the team that are performing parts of the study or interacting with study participants. Oftentimes, it's the clinical research coordinator who you would see as a participant the most. That might be who your first contact is with. That might be who you're talking to during the informed consent process, at each of your visits. And the coordinator, it could be what we call the CRC, but also could be a nurse, research assistant, pharmacists are involved, and lab technicians as well. But generally, the coordinator is the one that's going to stay with you through the whole journey of the trial. There's a sponsor or a funder of the clinical trial, which could be through our pharmaceutical biosciences industry, but could also be through our federal government granting agencies, such as CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research. Some studies are done in Canada that are funded by the US NIH, National Institute of Health Research. So there's different ways they can be funded, sometimes self-funded. Clinician researchers may have to fund the study themselves if they want to do. Within their own care settings and in their clinics. And the Research Ethics Board are involved. So what can you expect when you participate in the trial? It's really helpful, I think, to know as much as possible about what that would look like and to know that there's a process. And all clinical trials do follow a protocol that's determined in advance and approved in advance before participants can be enrolled. So the process would look, you'd find a trial, whether through your care provider, whether online, through a specialist, through friends, family sometimes. And the first thing you would do is meet with your regular doctor or healthcare provider or the doctor on the clinical trial team, a member of the team who can answer your questions, really getting the information as much as possible and asking all the questions you have. Next would be receiving an informed consent form to read and understand and then to sign. The challenge with those is they can be quite lengthy, and there can be a lot of other components that are more of a legal or component and not as much about the study. You really need to be able to pick out what those pieces are. And we're working across Canada actually to simplify this, to simplify the forms and to simplify the process, because I would say in the last 20 years, I've witnessed them go from being 2 pages to sometimes 30 pages in that time frame of where we're sitting now. But the idea there is to learn what is going to be happening in the trial, what would you be receiving, what would you be required to do. Then you would, and of course the risks and potential benefits if there are any. There's a screening process that would determine if you're eligible and you can participate in the trial. That may or may not be a physical exam, or it could be just taking your medical history. May or may not be lab tests, and may not have scans. It is all very dependent on the particular study. Once the study doctor confirms you're eligible to participate and you're interested to continue, then at that point, you may have additional questions to answer or additional testing that would be done before you would receive the intervention or the treatment. You go through that process. It could be 1-2 visits up to over the course of, and that could be over a few months, up to multiple visits over a number, 2 or 3 years, depending on the trial. And a lot of them will include those follow-up visits. I did mention the Research Ethics Board process, but what is in place in Canada for protection of participants? And there are a number of ways that this is done, including requirements for clinical research to have Research Ethics Board review and approval before the trial begins, and annually once it starts, but also as new information is found by the researchers that may affect willingness to participate. There needs to be an update to participants that's also reviewed by the Research Ethics Board. There is a data safety monitoring committee that's independent that looks at the data generally quarterly that's coming in, and surveillance of any of the adverse events at a national or global level, sometimes depending on the trial. Of course, the informed consent process is in place, that oversight of the scientific and medical aspects of the trial. There's something called good clinical practice guidelines, and those are international, but also adopted by Health Canada that the researchers are required to follow, and Health Canada actual regulations, which includes their ability to inspect and audit the sites where the clinical trials are being done or the components of the clinical trial. So that's all in place to protect study participants. When you participate in a clinical trial, you are closely watched by the trial team to make sure any side effects are carefully monitored and managed if needed, and that the treatment is being given in the right way. On your side, is to do your part to follow the protocol as best you can, or to contact the study team if for some reason you can't. Maybe you can't make one of the visits. Maybe you can't make that phone call. Maybe you're going to be going on vacation and you need to take a pause on that for a while. You are able to notify the study team of those things. The aim of a study is for the benefits to be greater than the risks. And so by participating in a clinical trial, you could be one of the first patients to receive a life-changing treatment, help future generations of patients, and to be part of helping researchers better understand an illness. But it really is up to you. And even when you're invited, and even when you've started the trial, you always have the right to decide if you want to participate, if you wish to continue or withdraw at any time. So it's a continual consent process, always before anything happens. Do you wish to continue with this? And that you are assured that the confidentiality of your personal and your health information will be protected. It's the law, even if you've completed or left the clinical trial. We do have some information I know that the Society is sharing with you. I would like to gratefully acknowledge the information that I've shared with you in these slides are adapted from N2 Canada, or Network of Networks. And this is the program around It Starts With Me, which is a website, which you saw the video from. And this was developed, and I was part of the team when we developed this, working with patients and caregivers to really find a resource for Canadians to learn more about clinical trials. And I would really encourage you to check it out. There's also a really great FAQ section if you have more questions after today. I've got the link here, QR code, but it's also in the materials that the Society will be sharing with you today. But how do you find the clinical trials? Generally, people start with asking their doctor or another member of your healthcare team. There's also a website. Yes, it's US based, but it captures most of the Canadian trials. Is clinicaltrials.gov. It can be hard to navigate. It can be hard to work with. They are trying to simplify that. So I would suggest one great way to look for studies that are across the country would be the Trial Finder, developed by Clinical Trials Ontario. It's a simplified version or a way to interact with the clinicaltrials.gov. And it does cover studies in BC. And you can just put in whatever type of study you want to search on. In British Columbia, though, we have a platform, ReachBC, you're going to hear about now, that really is focused on connecting patients, the public, and researchers, and also patient partners who get to be members of the research team to help them find each other and continue on that research journey. So with that, I would like to pass over to my colleague, Aisling Quigley, who is the program manager of ReachBC.
Thank you, Alison. Hello, everybody. I'm Aisling Quigley. I'm the program manager. I'm really grateful to be on this call today, and I hope that I can share something of use and that you leave knowing a little bit more about how you can access volunteering and health research studies. So if you're wondering to begin with, if you haven't ever heard of ReachBC, our URL or website is reachbc.ca, and we'll share the link in the resources as well, or you can scan this QR code. But before I jump into exactly what ReachBC is, we have a lovely video to share about what is a clinical trial. So in our YouTube library, and perhaps I'll share that link in the chat now also, we have created 5 videos for the public. So what does it mean to volunteer in health research? What does it mean to volunteer as a patient partner? What does it mean to volunteer in a clinical trial? A couple of different videos that could be educational and helpful on your health research journey. So let's play this one. I think it's really beautifully done and it's pretty informative.
I've just seen over the years how many unanswered questions there are, and that the only way to make medicine better is by answering these questions.
When you're in any kind of critical illness, any kind of chronic illness, agency becomes a huge factor. You want agency, you want the ability to shape your own story.
It feels good that you're giving hope to the participants, and you can see that they're encouraged by what could be happening, or that they're helping research.
Clinical trials, basically, it refers to studies that involve people, where we're actually doing things to participants to look at how we can change the outcome.
And I saw this ad in the paper, and it's a one-year commitment where you go 2 or 3 times a week to an exercise class. It was simple, yeah, and very enjoyable. One of the wonderful things about it was I'd made good friends out of it.
People think, well, I don't want to be tested on, I don't want to be a guinea pig, but there's many measures in place in Canada to ensure that clinical trials are being conducted in the most ethical and safe manner.
For those individuals who are in the group that doesn't receive the treatment, that they at least, at minimum, receive what is called usual care.
For science. We should all participate for science. But in fact, it is an interesting thing to do. The more we get people aware of clinical trials, participating in clinical trials, unafraid of clinical trials, the better we're all going to be. It's going to be better for our health system. It's going to be better for our patients.
So I think volunteering is great. It's great for the people, and without people volunteering for the different programs here at UBC, they wouldn't be able to get those statistics from anywhere.
We are governed by the federal governments and provincial governments in our running of clinical trials. All the details of the trial will be laid out quite extensively in a consent form. We always encourage people to take away those consent forms if they have time to do so, and compile a good list of questions for us, which we love to answer.
I want to make sure that they understand, so I'll ask them and get them to tell me. And it's ongoing throughout the study as well. So it's not just at the beginning. You want to make sure that every visit, do they understand? Do they remember? So it's an ongoing educational process, really.
What we hope is that within the healthcare system, whatever recommendations or treatment received is evidence-based, and so this is where clinical trials are critical in informing those decisions.
We used to treat urinary tract infections for 7 days. They did studies of 5 days and 3 days and 1 day, and they determined that, well, lo and behold, 1 day is too short and people tend to relapse. 3 days is just right for a lot of uncomplicated urinary tract infections. So you can refine things.
There's many different ways that people can find out about clinical trials available to them. One option we have in BC is a provincial platform accessible to all British Columbians called ReachBC.
So in terms of recruitment, we definitely use ReachBC to help us in sharing information regarding our clinical trials and to recruit potential individuals, and we have found it to be highly effective.
ReachBC lists health research opportunities, opportunities to partner in health research and in clinical trials.
I can't wait to do another one.
So I think you'll kind of see from that video what ReachBC is really about is about creating connection. So essentially we're a matching service, and similar to dating websites, except we match people, but we match people with studies based on their eligibility. So we bring researchers and members of the public together. And so by facilitating this connection, people can get involved in health research, because at the end of the day, what we really believe is empowering the person. How can we empower the volunteer to take control of their health? And we do this by offering a full circle service. So what does a full circle service mean? It means from the very minute you sign up to ReachBC and create your profile on your dashboard. That's your own personalized dashboard, which I'll take you through. But you express interest in the study. This is followed by connecting with the researcher, perhaps followed by participating in the study, learning more about your health journey and your other benefits along the way, and full circle to viewing the study results. And at any stage, being able to log back into your profile to access all of this information. So anybody in BC, British Columbia, 16 years and up can create a ReachBC volunteer account. And I think it's important to note, We don't just have clinical trials on our site, and I hope after today you'll take a visit. We have lots of different types of studies. You can participate as a patient partner. You can participate in a behavioral study, in an online survey, in an online study. There's lots of different types of studies in health research that you can get involved in. I love these testimonials from a couple of different volunteers who've participated in ReachBC. I think it really showcases that we take a patient-centric approach. How can we provide better access, more awareness, and facilitate that connection? And I like that with ReachBC, you get to decide what study is of interest to you, and only then is your data and your contact information shared. When I say data, I mean your phone number and your email, so that the researcher can contact you. So by providing you with a list of suitable matches. And I love what Jeff says here on the far right. It really is about how can we come together to improve our healthcare system and find better remedies, better cures, while feeling like we're giving back, but improving our own health along the way. Next slide, please. So we'd love today, after today, and you come and you go visit our YouTube library, or you go and watch the rest of the videos just to learn a little bit more about what exactly is involved. So now I'm going to take you on the next slide over a quick overview of our website. For the purpose of time, I've taken some screenshots. So the first graphic here is of our volunteer tab. So when you visit reachbc.ca, we have a couple of different tabs across the top. We have a volunteer tab. So on this one, you're going to see all about what does it mean to sign up as a volunteer, how do you do it, and what are the benefits. The second tab on next, thanks, Sonia. The second tab is for our researchers. So if you think about our audiences for ReachBC, our two primary visitors or users of our site are volunteers and researchers. So our second tab is for researchers to provide more information and helping you. How can researchers find study participants and healthy volunteers? And how can we facilitate the sharing of their trials, the recruitment of their trials, and the sharing of their study results on ReachBC? On the next graphic, you'll see that we have a Find Studies page. So you can go to this page today and see all of the studies currently available to participate in across British Columbia that are listed on ReachBC. And so this is open to the public. You don't have to have created your volunteer account to access this. And on here, you can see clinical trials, patient partner opportunities, study participant opportunities. You can also filter and search by region, by health authority. And really the purpose of this is broadening access. We're expanding out across the province so that everybody can see exactly what is available and open right now. So on the next slide, you'll notice I have a copy of our volunteer sign-up form. You can sign up as a volunteer. We don't ask for too much information when you initially sign up. You just give your name, your email, your basic contact information. And then what we ask is for you to select your health categories of interest. And the reason we ask this is because this is how we provide you with your matches. So when you are on your dashboard and you get your personalized list of matches, it's based on these health categories. So for example, if you click here, you'll see on the right, it says brain and nerve. Within that, by clicking on that, there's a subcategory where you can select Alzheimer's from the subcategory. And then any study listed within that category will be shown to you in your weekly matching email and on your volunteer dashboard. Next slide. So this is what your volunteer dashboard looks like. Once you've created your ReachBC account, it should take about 2 minutes. You can log in at any time. And I think something that's worth noting here is we have real life support. So myself and Anya are available to help you. So if at any stage you forget your password, you can't navigate your dashboard, you can't find a study, anything goes on, you can reach out directly to us. We share our phone number and our emails. We're in the office Monday to Friday, and we're always assisting both volunteers and researchers. So it's really easy to get in touch with us if for any reason you need that. But on your dashboard, there's three personalized tabs just for you. So the first tab will show you a list of all your matches. So that's based on your health categories that you've selected. The second tab is going to show you all of your projects. So anything that you've said, okay, I'm interested in participating in this study. And then your third tab shows your archived projects. Next graphic, I should say. So how it works, when you are looking at a study on your dashboard, or on the Find Studies page in ReachBC, and you find a study, you find a clinical trial, you're like, this sounds really interesting. I'm not really sure if I'm eligible, but I'd love to learn more. I'm going to express my interest. And so by doing so, you click on that yellow kind of orangey button that you can see there that says I'm interested. And so when you click on that button, your contact information appears on the researcher's dashboard. So they have time, and you'll get a little notification that says, okay, you've expressed interest. Sometimes if it's an online survey or there's a pre-screening before the researcher reaches out, it will bring you directly to an online survey or an online link. But if you're on your dashboard and you're like, oops, I accidentally hit I'm interested, I don't want to participate, I don't want that researcher reaching out, or you change your mind for whatever reason, you can go back into your dashboard, back into your My Projects tab, find the study, and then open it, and there's a withdraw interest button. So you have full control at all stages over your information and your journey in volunteering. So for now, I would love to pass over to my colleague Anya to bring you through a few examples of studies currently on our site and what might be of interest for you to participate in. So Anya, thank you.
So much, Aisling. So hello everyone, my name's Anya Wilcox, and as Aisling and Alison mentioned, I'm the platform administrator for ReachBC. So what you can see on our slide here is just one example of some of the dementia or Alzheimer's related studies that are currently posted on ReachBC. And I know we've shared a few numbers with you today, but a few more that may be of interest. There are currently 7 active studies relating to dementia on the ReachBC site. So if you do want to go and have a look, I'd really encourage you to do so. And since ReachBC started, we've had an additional 39 studies relating to dementia or Alzheimer's that have been posted on our site. So there really is a number of studies that are coming through on ReachBC that are there and available to take a look at. The example that you can see currently on your screen is an example of a clinical trial where biomarkers are being investigated for Alzheimer's disease and traumatic brain injuries to see whether or not they can be measured using a rapid blood test. And this is just one example of a clinical trial that's currently on our site. And just to share, there's also 2 additional studies. The first one that you can see on the left-hand side there, these highlight kind of, as Aisling mentioned, the different types of studies that are on our site. So the one on the left is a patient partner opportunity for co-designing dementia-friendly communities. And this is a really interesting study in which individuals can go in and kind of provide their perspective on this. And the one on the right there is now closed, but just another example is a study for creating a choir community to reduce dementia-related stigma. And this is one example where we're hopefully going to receive the results from this study, and those will be posted in association. So you can go in and take a look and see what happened with that study kind of full circle. And I'm going to touch on that feature in a moment. But I believe I'm correct in saying that both of these studies are kind of affiliated and linked with the Alzheimer's Society. So just to kind of mention that as well. So this study results feature that I mentioned briefly there, what does that mean? Well, as Aisling mentioned, there are some fantastic features on our site, but when you're looking at a study, there are a couple of tabs. There's the details tab that comes with all of the information there, but one of the tabs that will appear once the study is closed for recruitment is the results tab. And what this will allow you to do is to go in, and it allows researchers to share the study results with participants. So why is that important? That might not necessarily seem like a fantastic feature, but it is for us because it allows a couple of great things. So the first thing is it means that participants can stay informed and up to date on a study as it progresses. And we know from participants that have taken part in clinical trials and other types of studies, actually finding out what happens with that study and what their contribution was and what that amounted to is really important for them, because you don't want to just go to sort of that study to end and to never hear about it again. So this is a great way for individuals to stay connected in that sense. And it also, from a researcher perspective, allows them to share those results through a public shareable URL that's just available for people for researchers themselves to be able to share what it is and what that participation in those studies enabled them to go on and do. So just to mention a couple of numbers in ReachBC, we've had a fantastic few years with a huge amount of kind of increase in people taking part. So as you can see, in January, beginning of this year, we started off just shy of 7,000 volunteers, and over the last sort of 8 or 9 months, we're now just shy of 8,000 volunteers, and I am determined that we will get there hopefully by the end of this year. And that's the number of individuals who are specifically signed up and receiving those matching emails and those suggested studies via ReachBC. That doesn't involve the number of people who are maybe Googling about research and taking a look at our site in general. That's the number of volunteers that are kind of signed up to our site at the moment. And on the right-hand side, it can kind of show you a little bit just about where some of our volunteers are based. So a lot of our volunteers are based in the Lower Mainland, but we're really proud to say that we do have a number of volunteers from all the areas all over BC, from the Kootenays to the northeast. We are trying to increase our numbers of individuals in all of those regions. So wherever you may be, we'd really love you to get involved and sign up on ReachBC. So again, I know we shared a lot of numbers with you today, but just as a bit of an overview, as I mentioned, we currently have 7,942 volunteers signed up to ReachBC, which is fantastic. 630 of those volunteers have enrolled, and by enrolled I mean potentially taken part or have signed up to that study, to 2 or more studies. We have 741 studies that have been listed on the ReachBC directory since it began, and there are currently 180 studies that are live and option for you to sign up to. As I mentioned, there are 7 that are currently related to dementia or Alzheimer's as well. And we have 1,300 researchers who are registered and keen to get as many people involved in their research as possible. On the right-hand side there, what you can see is the health categories that Aisling mentioned earlier. These health categories are how we match volunteers with studies and how we suggest them studies that are relevant to them. When you sign up, you select health categories that are relevant to you, and similarly so do researchers when they are posting a study. The numbers that you can see on the right are just how many volunteers have selected those health categories. And I just wanted to note that when we combined the selection of Alzheimer's and dementia, it was actually the second highest ranked health category selection for our volunteers. We are saying that this is combined because they are 2 separate health categories. So some individuals are single selecting and some may double select, but this is the combined total when Alzheimer's or dementia was selected. So just really interesting and definitely a very relevant health category to ReachBC. So that's all I wanted to share, but just for awareness, there are some great educational resources on ReachBC. So some things that I would encourage you to go and take a look at would be our Reach, so just www.reachbc.ca. Please do check out our YouTube channel. I posted that in the chat. And as mentioned, we have dedicated staff for volunteer and research questions and support. So myself and Aisling, as Aisling said, are on hand and available at all times. There is an email address as posted there, or you can email us directly. As Alison mentioned, please do also take a look at the information for Canadians about clinical trials and look at the It Starts With Me site. And we also have the BC Support Unit, which moves evidence developed with patients and communities into practice, services for researchers, patients and policymakers, clinicians and health system leaders. And you can learn more about the BC Support Unit by visiting the website, as mentioned below. So we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much for listening, and I will hand back to our presenters.
Thank you so much for that super informative presentation. And we had some great questions in the chat. So I'd like to open with a question from Lynette, who unfortunately had to leave the webinar a bit early. But in case Lynette tunes into the on-demand recording, and I'll paraphrase, what are the ethics of signing up a partner living with dementia? In the event that the person living with dementia refuses to participate on the day, does it cause problems for the researchers? So I'd like to open this up to our guest presenters. And we also have Sarah Wu, our host for today, who can also weigh in.
Maybe I'll take a stab at this, Carrie. Really great question. It really is. And I think that's part of the ongoing informed consent process. That's why that's so important, because that is where the researcher or the member of the team has to reaffirm. Now, let's say, for example, at that second visit, the person doesn't remember what they're there for or what it is they've done so far and isn't quite sure what's happening. That's where we would definitely encourage caregivers to come to all the appointments and or trusted family member, caregiver to be supporting them. How is that handled by the research team? What are the ethics of that? I think it's very individual to the study and to the individual, to the participant. Many times, this is something that and I'm sure many of you on this call would know Jim Mann. And we work with Jim in terms of he provides advice to our organization and we've had this conversation with Jim. And what he tells me is that we really need to find ways for people living with dementia to participate in it. Those should still be options, and those doors should not be closed. And there's ways to do this, and we're learning how to do this better. And so I can't answer more than that at this time. I would definitely go to someone like Jim and say, Jim, tell me more about this. So I would go to the ethics committees, and actually each of the studies will have a number on that consent form where you can get in touch with the ethics committee who reviewed it. You can also ask those questions there. So I would offer that. Sarah, you were nodding.
Yeah, I think the ongoing consent process is really important. And I think it also matters where on the journey the person living with dementia is. And so there's something called, well, we have informed consent, but there's also something called assent. And assent is in a situation where someone, can't legally give informed consent depending on where they are in their dementia journey. But it is still very important that we're providing accessible, clear information about what potentially would be involved if they agreed to participate in a study. And so what can happen is you would go through an assent process for the person living with dementia, which is, explaining what their participation entails, what the risks are, what the benefits are, all that good stuff. But then you also have a trusted caregiver alongside, ensuring that the best interest of their person is being respected. So you could have a situation where a family caregiver can say, yeah, this would be, beneficial for my person to participate in. But then the person living with dementia could say, I understand and no, thank you. So, and in that situation, then, they would not proceed forward with participating. And and so it is a very individual process, but it is something that has to be done on an ongoing basis. And I see Heather has jumped on. So Heather, yeah, please chime in because I think this is a really important question.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Please excuse my voice as I recover from laryngitis. Um, Someone who sits on a research ethics board, this is something that we are always wanting to make sure that researchers who are participating in clinical trials have built into their research methodology. So again, as Sarah explained, there's the consent, the ongoing consent, but also this assent, which offers that person who lives with dementia an opportunity to assent to whether they want to participate in that particular research encounter. Now, as a researcher, and Sarah and I both held positions in the academic world before we joined the society, we are bound if someone expresses that they do not want to participate even though a family member may have signed the consent form, we need to respect the wishes of the individual who lives with dementia. And so in that instance, the interview or the administration of the treatment or whatever it happens to be would not go ahead because that individual had refused. So, and recognizing that for an individual who lives with dementia, there's, fluctuations, right, in terms of what they are feeling capable of or what they may understand from day to day. And so that might be a once-off occurrence. If it happens to be a multiple occurrence and happens several times in a row, then probably that individual would be removed from the study, that would be written into the ethics protocol. But, researchers and ethics boards are highly aware of this. But also, we want to do, as Jim says, do whatever we can to ensure that individuals have the best possible opportunities to actually participate and that we're not excluding people unnecessarily.
Thanks, Heather. Thank you for rounding out that very loaded and very, very important question. So I just would like to thank the team from Michael Smith for taking the time to share more about your platform and ways that you are engaging patients across the province to make quality of life better, to make health a priority. So thank you so much. And so I just want to again invite those who attended today. If you have any feedback or you'd like more information or you want to get in contact with us for any reason, please shoot us an email, research@alzheimersbc.org. We would love to hear from you. If you would like more information about dementia or wondering about programs and services that we offer through the Society, please give our first linked dementia helpline a call. And our operators can support you in English, Punjabi, Cantonese, and Mandarin.